Welcome to the Volunteer Youth Worker Podcast. Youth ministries rise and fall on the volunteers. So we are here to encourage and equip you. Join the conversation as we tackle the practical questions you are asking so you can help the next generation know Jesus.
Everybody, welcome back to the Volunteer Youth Worker Podcast. I've got Lisette and Sid joining in. How are you guys doing?
So good.
Great.
We've got coast to coast represented and internationally. This is an international podcast now because Lisette, you're coming to us from the East Coast in Atlanta.
It's true.
Is Atlanta considered the East Coast? Kind of? No?
I don't really know. It's the South.
It
but
is
the East,
the South.
But the South? Southeast?
It's the east side of the U.S.
Okay. Let's do that.
How close are you to the beach if you wanted to drive straight east?
4 hours.
Oh, that's a little further.
Yeah.
A bit of a stretch. It'd be like the west coast of, or the west side of New Brunswick. Would be 4 hours.
Oh, or not unlike Kelowna. We're 4 hours to the ocean as well. So,
and I was going to say you were the West Coast, Sid,
sure.
But again, 4 hours from the actual coast.
You know what we are? We're kind of like the margin on a paper that you wrote at college. That's kind of what we are. You know, like we're just
right.
I like
in from the edge.
I like it. So listen, you guys, you guys are experts here in youth ministry, and we're glad that we get a chance to ask this question to the both of you. You've seen this in action personally. You've seen and coached other leaders on this. Lisette, I think you're actually doing, teaching on this for Orange. Is that right? This whole
It happens once in a while. It's true.
That's amazing. Yep. And we love that you are partnered with them. We feel honored that we get your time here over on our podcast.
No, I'm honored.
That's all good. Okay. So big question. What do you do when your small group is out of control? And we've thought that we're going to divide this conversation into a few different episodes because it's so big and because it's so necessary. Everybody that's listening, that's leading small groups, they know, man, my small group gets out of control. Sometimes every week. Some people are like, yeah, that's like, isn't that what youth ministry is out of control small groups? And then other people are like, yeah, but from time to time. And so this week, this conversation, let's help some volunteer youth workers solve that immediate problem. There's probably some bigger systemic things. There's some larger challenges. But when they find themselves in front of a group of students, it's out of control. We want to help them out. What should you do? So let me start by just saying, Lisette, have you ever been in a situation where your small group was out of control?
Yes, unfortunately, far too many times. And, since we started this conversation, I thought of so many moments. There was this prime moment also where my husband and I were leading a girls and a guys group, but they would all meet at our house at the same time. They were all in 8th grade, grade 8. And like 40 of them showed up one week. And I don't know why there was so many of them that week, but the boys and the girls, there was so much going on. But then there was also this one kid that our dog hated. And so our dog was losing his mind, peeing everywhere in the house because he was upset about this child, who I also had questions about this child. But then there was people like throwing things, and I'm like, my house, my life, what is happening? Yeah. And I was like, can I just send them all home? Like, I realized they just got here, but can I send them all home right now? So that I just like, somehow that chaos is still in my mind, this picture of the dog peeing, people yelling, things throwing. It was awful.
You know what, Lisa? That reminds me of my whole first month of youth ministry. So I finished at Briarcrest and started in Canmore, Alberta. My first day there, I was leading a small group, which was a complete disaster. And I almost went into a depression in that moment. And then immediately we went to midweek Bible studies, and it was terrible. We didn't have like a church building or anything. We just had an office. So I had about 11 junior hires in an office, didn't know me, I didn't know them, and it was just complete mass chaos. I would finish youth almost on a weekly, and I would go to my senior pastor's place, sit down beside him, and just begin to cry and tell him, I can't do this anymore. I think I'm done. And he'd be watching Sports Desk, and he would just be going, no, you're going to be fine. Don't even worry about it. And that is, without any exaggeration, that was essentially my first month of youth ministry. So we feel you, people. We feel you in this
feel you.
Oh.
Okay, so let's think. We're in the position. We've got a leader. They're standing there. And to set the stage, it might be something like there's a couple of kids that are in the corner. They're completely disengaged. There's another kid that's actually actively disrupting the group. They might be yelling things. They're not tracking. They're making noises. Obviously the whole group isn't tracking with you at all. And so you realize you've completely lost control. Lisette, Sid, what do you do in that moment?
I mean, I'm going to say first pray, ask Jesus to give you some sanity.
Do
You know,
you
you could
pray out
even
loud? Is that an out loud prayer? Like, well,
Whatever you got to do in that moment. Sometimes just yelling the name of Jesus is helpful.
I generally move to a position of, Lord, if the rapture could happen, now would be a great moment. You know, I might be praying
Now
something like
could
that.
be it.
This is the moment, please.
That's
Hey, you know what I think is
amazing.
really important is there's things we can do.
Yeah.
And what we want to do is give you tools so you can actually feel like you have some power in that space. There's nothing worse than having no power and feeling completely out of control, but you're not. And so we've got something for you. Lisette, you had a great one. I loved your
We
first one that you
do.
said.
I mean, listen, the first thing I want to do is get everyone moving and get them into like some sense of like, oh, we're doing something together. So in that moment, I mean, for me, my go-to move is to say, okay, let's get everyone in. Let's do a game. Get everyone standing up, get them in a circle, get them refocused on what we're doing. So that feels like step one to me. And I want to get as practical as just to say, play rock, paper, scissors. That's an okay thing to do. Do a human not do something, but do something that gets everyone physically moving, change the scope of what's happening, change the focus of what's happening, and get them focused back on you as a leader.
Yeah, and Lisette, I'd even go really focus with rock, paper, scissors. I'd say, okay, we're going to play 3 games of rock, paper, scissors, see how many wins you get in 3 games. So now they actually have a target that they're shooting
Yep.
for. They're actually in this kind of like compete mode and they're actually accomplishing something. So it really brings them in together, gets their
Yep.
body moving, gets their head shaking. That's all
100%.
such good work. Love
So
that.
It changes everything.
Everybody partners up. Everybody plays rock, paper, scissors 3 times. Lisette, what do you actually say? So everything has gone haywire. What are the words that come out of your mouth to garner the attention to play this kind of game? Just because, again, there's a couple leaders, especially some that maybe haven't been, doing this for very long, or they haven't been in kind of group leadership before. Like, how do you regain that? What do you say?
You got to channel your inner, like, I don't know who it is that you find in yourself. Is it the coach? Is it your mom voice, like your dad voice? I don't know what it is, but there's a moment you just got to be a little louder and a little more authoritative than like, just think of your favorite character. If that's not typically you, I don't have a problem with this, but some people do. And it's okay. But it's like, hey, like you just want to be loud enough to force everyone to look at you, right? And it's not angry. It's just strong. It's clear. And then it's like, hey, this is what we're doing. And you want to be really clear. It's not a question. It's a, hey, come on in. This is what we're going to do next. And they're not going to expect it because the room is out of control. So you've just taken a moment to establish control again. And I think it really is a, hey, come on in. This is what we're doing next.
And Lisette, I think there's a difference between being loud and being angry. And
Totally.
so we're not suggesting angry at all. It's really great. You got to get your emotions under control because you don't want to add to the drama or the emotion of the moment. So your emotions under control, you're loud, you're actually for kids, but you're really directive. Hey, come on in here. I love that. I think that's really important.
And I think you're saying you actually want people to, like, usually if we're in group settings, we're probably sitting. And so if you stand up and yell, hey, everybody stand up, it's like, whoa, everybody's now changing, and that posture usually adjusts attention and adjusts what they're even physically doing. Because if they're playing on their phone or something like that, it adjusts their attention. I now have to look up as I'm standing up. Okay, that's really interesting. Now, there are a couple of and unfortunately, it's usually younger leaders, people that haven't been in this and for very long. How can they know that they're not coming across as too angry or too? Because maybe there's some people that are like, I want to make sure that these kids know that I like them and I love them, and I don't want to sound like their teacher or like their mom. Like that actually makes them a bit nervous. Do you just want to speak to that maybe newer leader that's nervous about coming across as a coach or as a teacher?
Well, I mean, from my vantage point, I guess I would say they actually need you to have control in that space. They're expecting you to have control of this space, even though they're going to test you and push you. It's like every kid who needs a parent to actually have some guidelines. We need a God who has guidelines, and we need small groups that have guidelines. So they're actually expecting you to have authority in that space. So I would encourage you to not be scared of that. And the highest goal is actually not for them to like you. The highest goal is for them to have an effective experience. And they will like you when they trust that you're creating a safe space that has a purpose. And so that's actually what you're reestablishing, is that there's purpose here and that you're going to create a safe enough space that everyone gets something out of it. It's not just chaos. So that feels really counterintuitive, but if you can kind of try to remind yourself of that, and if you're typically really quiet and really nice, loud will feel angry, and that's okay. Just ask somebody to check you later. It just will. It'll feel so uncomfortable. You'll be like, I was so crazy. And the kids will be like, huh? They won't even know.
The other part of it too that we're thinking of in the moment, you have to get authority and you have to establish that controlled environment. But how we work with kids outside of that moment is really going to dictate how they experience us in that moment as well. So, my kid had a coach who was just a yeller and an intense yeller, but they knew the coach actually loved them. Like they really did. They knew the coach loved them. They knew the coach was for them. So it changed how they even heard that moment. It got their attention and motivated and moved them, but they knew that the coach was for them, not against them. So, maybe a principle on the side here is if you're having a struggle when your group is all together in that space, make sure you're spending a significant amount of time outside of that space, just in an enjoyable place where you don't have to have that same type of control so that they can hear you better when you're in that space.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, that's good. So that's a great first, here's an activity, here's a thing to do, you're moving people, you finish the game, and then after finishing the game, I'm assuming, that resets it so that you come back, okay, now we're going to re-engage in the questions. Is that kind of the idea? Okay, so once they're back in that, sorry, we're on a podcast. Lisette and Sid both nodded.
Sorry, that's super unhelpful. Yes,
it is.
They've played a game. We've done some rock, paper, scissors. Now we're going to sit down again and we're going to take 2 or 7.
And I would like to say that you should probably move to that pretty quick after the rock, paper, scissors, because you've regathered their attention. You've refocused them. Let's use that moment and move right into what we want to actually be accomplishing.
Okay, let's say you get them back down, everybody's sitting again, and all of a sudden you realize, this is still not quite working. I don't quite have control. There's too much side talking going on. What's another tool or tactic in our tool belt that we can have for keeping the conversation together?
Yeah, we would use just a method of control where you would move an object. Whoever has the object gets to speak while they have the object, and so
the classic talking stick.
Absolutely, the classic talking stick, which sometimes can turn into the beating stick. So we want to be careful about that. But as soon as they have that object in their hand, they have the right to speak. And then, what takes place is, especially for younger kids, there's something concrete and clear that speaks about how we can be fair with each other. It's fair for me to talk when I have the stick. It's fair for me to not talk when I don't have the stick. So again, it's something tactile, something they can touch, something they can see, and there's a clear expectation attached to it, and that can become something that's really helpful. The other thing you could do with the stick is create a time limit on it as well. You really only get it for 15 to 30 seconds, so kind of make that moment count. And the stick can go back to the leader and then back to a student, back to the leader, back to a student, which is probably not a bad play. You can go student to student, but again, the object can get a little out of control sometimes when you move it that way. So you have a moment of control again when it gets back to the leader. Now, Lisette, you guys used to have a special talking stick when you used to do it in your small groups. Right?
It was the scenario I was discussing was when this moment happened, because we didn't know what to do and I needed a talking stick, and the only objects in my house were either nice things or dog toys. And the dog toy I found was a moose. And so our group from that point forward became known as the Dead Moose Society because this moose looked terrible, but we would throw this dog toy at each other and it was like, you talked when you held the moose. It became a thing and it was great.
That's awesome. I love it so much.
So finding a funny object probably does give you a little bit of a perk so that it can be an enjoyable experience, or even adjusting it each week. Sid, you brought up something that I think I'm remembering so much from my youth ministry experience, that sometimes the interaction, our in our mind is, since we're trying to sit in a circle, we want the conversation to flow like a natural group conversation where people are talking to each other. But oftentimes, if you've lost control of the group, you need to insert yourself as the conduit for conversation. So typically in middle school groups, especially middle school guy groups, at least that's the context that I've been in. I'm sure middle school groups might be the same, but that you actually want students not to talk amongst themselves. You want the conversation to come back to you. I'm asking you the question as the leader. You're responding to me. I relay it back to the group, and then I take the object and I hand it to the next person and then have that conversation. And we've actually done it before especially if the groups get large, right? So if unfortunately you look and you've got like, man, there's 10, 12, 15, 16 guys in this group, the circle is not going to work. And so instead, actually putting them physically in rows so that they're all pointed directly at you as the leader, you always are standing, you're not sitting. And so then you're moving from person to person, you're, engaging that interaction. And again, kind of chairing the whole conversation for the group and relaying it back, I think helps establish the understanding that I'm asking you individually the question and you're responding back to me, not going side to side with it. I don't know. Is that fair, or is that a little bit too strong?
No, I think it's actually really helpful because, again, what you're doing is you're controlling it. You're creating breaks in the flow that can also help things from moving out of control. I do think the win is when we're communicating together, but with junior highs especially, we'll communicate to the front. I do think there's room, and I want to be careful on this. This depends on how well, we're dealing with a situation that seems to be moving out of control, but sometimes I'm okay to say, okay, for 30 seconds, turn to the person beside you, talk, okay, now someone tell up front, what did you come up with? And again, that kind of movement and break in the conversation can allow for a type of control while still giving them agency or volition or ability to contribute. So there's a couple of those movements, but I do think, especially if we're with a group that's a little harder to stay focused, much more easier to be distracted, keep them coming back to something that they can actually see as well and have to lock onto. So I just think that whole tactile element is really helpful.
Yeah, that's good. And then my last thought, because again, I'm just remembering. So the context is that when we did our middle school ministry and had 100, 150 middle school students, we would put them all in their small groups in our big auditorium. It was a big auditorium, so I would watch from the stage and actually see, oh, this group is out of control. This group is getting things rolling. This group needs some help. And so all of these examples are like, oh yeah, I remember when Brandon led grade 7 guys, and like these were some of the challenges. We'd actually get convince the leaders to help the students actually police themselves, so that if you're doing a talking stick, hey, and Brandon's got, he's a grade 7 guy and he's got the talking stick, but Scotty is talking and not paying attention, then as a leader, rather than me asking Scotty to stop talk, I'm going to say, Brandon, Scotty's not listening to you anymore. How does that make you feel? And then Brandon looks over and Scotty's like, why aren't you listening to me, man? And then, you get all of a sudden self-policing in the group, which is kind of building up that whole culture of we care about each other. We want to talk and listen to each other. And they kind of buy into the process. It doesn't work all the time, but at least it kind of moves them in the direction I think we want them to go. Random idea from Moncton. Okay, Lisette, tell us. So we've got ideas there. We're going to try moving the group. We're going to try with the object to regain control. What if we're still just not regaining control? The group is still struggling here. What do we do?
I think then you think about just moving the kid, right? You need to look at who we've got in the group, where the disruption is happening, and how to reorganize it so the disruption slows itself down. So if you've got 2 kids beside each other that all they do is hit each other, let's move them and separate them. If you've just got one kid who's really disruptive, they can come be my best friend and come sit right beside me, right? Like, what does it look like to just move the kids, shift the space so that you've got kids moved into a scenario that's a bit better of a win for them? And I think I just want to say, we're talking about this. We're going to talk later about how to set things up to win. We're going to talk later about kids with special abilities, special needs in other ways. We're talking just typical scenarios of kids who are just struggling and trying to make sure that you can gain control of your group. So I'd say move the kid.
Yeah, because we know, and one of the other episodes we'll do is on some of those specific diverse abilities. Like sometimes kids physically can't stay engaged, like they actually have, if it's a mental health challenge or, part of their development or whatever it might be. And so we have to honor that for sure. In the event that it is just, there's a distraction here, what do you actually say to the kids? So let's use the example of there's 2 kids, they're just still not paying attention. They are being disruptive. What do you actually say, and what do you physically do?
For me, I might just turn to him and go, hey, Jimmy, why don't you come sit over here beside me for a little bit, okay? I think that's going to be really good for all of us. So come on, join me. I might move towards Jimmy. If Jimmy's not moving towards me, I might move towards Jimmy then and sit between Jimmy and Jeff, because it's always Jimmy and Jeff, by the way. It's just crazy how those two are always an issue.
Every time.
Every single time. So I might sit between Jimmy and Jeff and move myself into that space to try to create some semblance of control. And by the way, most of us are functioning with two small group leaders in these spaces, or at least we should. So, you might move one towards you, the other one might move towards the other leader, or the other leader might move into that space as well. And if Jimmy and Jeff are consistently an issue, you might even be preemptive by coming in and sitting right beside them at the beginning of the small group as well, to kind of just start being in that space with them. I think what's really important, just in the scenario we're talking about, is we're dealing with normal kids right now. We're actually not dealing with someone in particular that's being malicious. These are normal kids. They're having a struggle, a little more excited. Someone had way more sugar tonight than they should have. By the way, we always used to unplug the pop machine, but somehow that thing would get plugged back in for junior high night. And those kids were cranking that back, and woo, that small group was going to have a winner that evening. So, that's what we're dealing with. And so we would want to move the kid or move towards the kid in that moment.
Yeah.
That's good. Anything else that you want to say about ways to communicate that, even if you recognize, like, oh man, these two kids are. This is sometimes what would happen in our world is they came together. They're good friends. They're there because they want to be together. And so, in the moment, just to clarify, like, hey, why are you now separating us, or why do we not get to be together? How do you communicate that?
If I'm in that space, what I'm going to do is, if I'm moving towards them now, I might sit in between them. And a really nice way to do is go, Jimmy, Jeff, man, I love you guys. Hey, listen, tonight is a little bit harder time to focus. Let me come and join you, because I know it's hard for me sometimes too, and we're all going to focus together. So you're using a tone of voice and language that continues to say, I'm for you, not against you, even while I'm trying to control the space. And I think it's really important to prepare yourself for that as you're going in, because it's pretty easy to lose that protection, that perspective pretty quickly.
Yep. That's really good.
Yeah, that feels right. Even just to physically for yourself to smile as you're having all of these conversations.
Good. That's great. Yeah.
Reminds you and reminds all the students, like, hey, this is okay. Because especially if you're not used to like this type of confrontation or this, exerting this type of control over situation, it can feel kind of heated. Your heart's pounding. You're a little bit nervous about this. You're trying to, do the right thing. But to try to de-escalate as much as possible, because if you're going to escalate the situation, you're going to create even more confrontation. And so by smiling, by being for them, all of that stuff is going to feel much more natural for the students. Hey, you guys obviously are loving this conversation. And so you're having such great conversation. We just want to hear from you guys. And so why don't I sit in between you? And then that way we can actually all hear the things that you're saying at the right time.
Jer, if I know I have a group of kids that are just pretty energetic, I might actually take 10 minutes before I get to youth, or even in the huddle time and write out 3 lines that I could use, so that that will help me be really focused on the for you experience. And I think, I think that's the important bit, is that we can be directive, we can be corrective, but there's a way to do it that says, I'm actually for you, not against you. And kids pick that up. And that's in your tone, of course, but that's also in the words you say and the way you say them. And I always think what the kind of shift I'm trying to make is, I want to move primarily from being confrontational to be invitational. I want to invite you into something better. And if I can position myself physically, like you said, with a smile on the face, so smart, I can position myself tonally that way. We can be loud, we can grab attention, but still be for. And then if I can use words that say, hey, I'm for you, all those things can be really helpful in that moment.
Okay,
I think that's so smart. When you're saying that too, I think the thing that keeps coming to my mind is, as you prepare that, if you can do that for any night, any small group you're thinking about, is also just thinking about those kids, like depending on their age, that's how many minutes of attention they have, right? And so if you can be so clear, so if you have kids that are all 11 or 12 years old, that's all they've got for you, right? For whatever one task you have. And so sometimes being really clear, like to Jimmy and who do we got? Jimmy and Johnny?
I think Jeff.
Susie and Sally, Jeff. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Susie and Sally, same boat. They're talking to each other. But even to say, hey, for 11 minutes, I'm going to ask you to dive into this question with me. Really, and we're going to rearrange how we sit for those minutes. And then we're going to play a game. And then we're going to try another 11 minutes on a different, and sometimes just really letting them know what the expectation is. They can track with you when they know, okay, I only got to do this for this many minutes.
Okay, this is good. So we've got a couple of good tools here. Playing the game, we're moving the object, we've moved the kids, we've repositioned ourselves. It's still not working. This is still out of control. We've got 15 kids, these 3 or these 2 or whatever. Somebody's just still not going. What are our next options? Because again, leaders are listening and they're like, I'm with you, but it's still not working. What do I do?
So I want to be careful on this one again, because at this point, your tone, the language you're using, the way you're engaging becomes really important. And it takes me a little while to get to this place. Again, they're kids, they're generally junior high that we're dealing with, attention spans, all those things. But at this point, I might take that individual and say, hey, it's time for us to move out. So I might come to them and say, Jeff, hey, listen, I know tonight's super hard for you. Why don't you come with me? We're going to go for a little walk. And I know that Jeremy, who's the point leader for the experience, is out there doing a little bit of work. He'd love you to come with him. Why not just for tonight? Come with me. We're going to go take a walk, get some energy out, because I know it's not easy for you. So let's go do that. So I'll take him and we'll actually leave together. Again, I'm assuming there's two leaders in the room at this moment. And so the other leader can have the conversation or take over it. Probably you and the other leader have already processed what this journey could look like and who's going to make that movement. But what I'm doing now is I'm taking that child out of the room. My goal is to go and connect them with the leader, allow them to still have a positive experience. This isn't discipline at this point in time. This is just trying to be helpful for the student and for the group, and creating space for that conversation to carry on and give him space to be able to just process whatever's been taking place that's keeping him really distracted in that moment. So at this point, I'm looking to move out with the kid into a different space.
Okay, how do you set that up if you are a solo leader? So you've got 12 kids and you're the only leader in the room. What do you do at that point?
Yeah, that's really difficult, to be honest with you. I'm really cautious on this. And this is something I think that you would want to process with your point leader beforehand. What do we do in this moment? Because, depending what the space is and depending kind of the plan to protect policies you might have in your organization and who that group of kids is, I think there's two possibilities. One is that you could actually contact the point leader to come and get the kid and then you just take them out to the door and the point leader is there. Hey, let's go for a walk, Jimmy. That's going to be great. So I think that for me would be the preferred option. And so whether it's a quick text, whatever it is, especially generally speaking, if you've come to this point, this isn't unexpected. You know that this is a bit of a struggle in your group. You know you've been trying to figure out how to manage it. You know those things are real. And so you're prepared a little bit for this. You've talked to the point leader. How should we handle this? If it gets to this place, what do we do? So you can access that point leader, meet them at the door, make that kind of a shift. In another scenario, and boy, I'm really cautious on this, you might just simply say to the group, okay, everybody, we're going to take 5 minutes. I need you to stay where you are. Talk about this amongst yourself. We'll be right back. And then you can make that move as well. Now, again, I want to be really careful when I come to this point, because now there's something kind of public that's happening in front of everyone. There's a real high chance that shame can start engaging in this moment, which again can increase negative behavior if shame begins to become a part of the experience. So I'm just acknowledging those things. Like, it's a pretty significant moment if I start making this move. Normally, what I would be doing is trying to make it through the evening, and then at the end of the evening, have the conversation and say, hey, I think maybe we need to take a break. That might be something that I would do that's not so much in the moment. But in this moment, it's become intense. It's really difficult. I want to move that kid outside of that space, and I want to connect them with someone else so that they can have a positive experience outside of that space that doesn't distract what's happening in that space.
Yeah, that's really good. Lisette, anything you want to add? I know when you've done ministry, even with your husband, he would kind of like be this gathering point for some students that would struggle in the night, which I always thought was really great. So if you're a point leader and you're thinking about this and you have students that this is their regular occurrence, to have like a drop off point where, even small groups could continue. It's just now in a different space. What did that look like for you guys?
Yeah. And I think, it's so hard because we want to live in the ideal, right? Like, I hope you have 2 leaders. I hope you have 8 kids. I hope everything works great and you're the coolest space and everything's beautiful. It's not typical, right? So when you're all of a sudden this solo leader, you're struggling, somebody's out for the night, whatever the case may be. I think for a point leader, if there's the possibility of creating, at least having one extra person somewhere in the building or the vicinity, that's the word I'm looking for, that can help you out, that'd be great. If you can have a space where kids can go, where there's activities they can go and do just to get whatever that energy out if that possibility is there, I think it's brilliant. Some kids just need to go be really active. Some kids need to go, draw something, whatever it is. And sometimes you can actually do that within the group and they become less distracting because they can just color or doodle while you talk and it can tone everything down. But sometimes they just got to get out of the space. And if you can create a space where they can go, I think, Sid, to what you're saying, where it doesn't create a sense of shame or it doesn't derail everything, that's ideal.
Lisette and Gerald, I want to be careful here, but there's a final step that we would talk about, and it's move everyone out. Okay, we're done. Let's just go get out. And I'm actually really open to suggesting that those two steps might flip for a couple of times. Like before I would take one individual and move them out, I would consider let's move the whole group and just say, hey, this has been a great evening. Let's just go to play. We got 5 minutes of conversation and that's for the win. And then there's no shame there. And once we're outside of that, we can actually address the situation with the individual and maybe the parent, if there's something consistent, to say, hey, how can we be helpful and not distracting in this space and come alongside you? So I do want to say again, like, man, these are kids. We love them. We know that there's so much right now that in our culture is against them even being able to maintain attention. Do you know what I mean? Like the junior high, they're constantly distracted. There's a normative space. This isn't easy. And some of these kids are coming from environments that are really difficult as well. So there's lots of reasons why they might be acting out, especially if they sense another person of authority in the room and they've struggled with that. So I do want to say, I think once we get to a place where we're having to move a child from the space, there's a lot of wisdom required to know, how to do that, when to do that, if to do that. And I want to say move the whole group is always like, it's okay. We're thinking long term here. Trust me, 3 years from now, if you can stay with it, your small group experience is going to be very different than it is right now. We're thinking long term as opposed to just the moment. But in the moment, sometimes we do have to respond. And especially if someone, is triggered in a way that's not safe for others, we're going to move them from the group. Absolutely. But we just want to acknowledge that there's a lot of emotional pressure in that space when we start to make that move.
This is great, you guys. Thanks so much for your wisdom on this topic. And then for everybody listening, come on back next week because we're going to actually talk a little bit about some of the bigger issues, the bigger maybe philosophies of your small group, ways that you can set yourself up so that this doesn't become an issue. And then the week after, we're also going to tackle this idea that there are some pretty specific challenges that students might be wrestling with, and how do you work through those particular things when they come with whether it be some diverse abilities, some, typical things that they might find support in the school system for, and yet we don't have the resources for that in our youth ministry. What do we do in those situations? So we'll look forward to coming back for that. Any last words, Lisette or Sid?
What you do matters. Just keep on.
And keeping on is the key. This isn't easy stuff. And sometimes you wonder if it does matter. Trust me, it does. I think about Jared. I got to go back to Canmore. That first month was awful, man. It was terrible. I finished there in 3 years, which was way too soon. But I didn't know what I did mattered until I was walking away and started to hear the stories. And all of a sudden you go, oh, there was so much more going on than I was aware of. And no, there is so much more going on than you're aware of. So stay the course, you guys. Stay with it. We appreciate you so much.